These haunted museums are hiding artifacts cursed by the devil himself. First up, the Dybbuk box. Paranormal investigator Zach Bagans opened his very own haunted museum in Las Vegas in 2017, which is home to a number of items that supposedly have. One thing that's housed there is the Dybbuk box, a wine box that is said to be so haunted by a Dybbuk, which is an evil spirit who is supposedly able to possess people. In fact, the box served as the inspiration for the 2012 movie The Possession. Now, the item came to fame when it was listed on eBay along with a creepy story about its past and was eventually donated to Bagans for his museum. Side note, kind of, well, you know Post Malone? Well, apparently he has actually been cursed by the Dybbuk box. He was at the museum when Bagans decided to take the plexiglass cover from around the box and actually touch it for the very first time. While he was touching the box itself, Post Malone actually grabbed his shoulder, enough apparently to transfer the curse. Now, in the months that followed Post Malone experienced one, his private plane was forced to make an emergency landing after its tires blew off. Two, three armed robbers targeted a home in San Fernando Valley that they actually believed to be his. And three, his Rolls Royce was involved in a serious car accident. Yep, that sounds like curse to me, but time will tell if more things happen. The cursed chair, also known as Thomas Busby's stoop chair. This simple wooden chair is said to have been cursed by accused slayer Thomas Busby. Now, Busby was executed by hanging in 1702 in North Yorkshire, but before he passed, he allegedly performed something sinister on the chair in question. Over the years, several passings have been attributed to people sitting in the chair and later passing in suspicious circumstances. It now remains at the Thirsk Museum, where it is displayed hanging from the ceiling, making it impossible for anyone, even museum staff, to actually sit on it. Next up, Great Bed of Ware. In around 1590, carpenter Jonas Fosbrook crafted a giant bed so large that it is said to be able to sleep 4 couples. The extra large bed now lives at the Victoria and Albert Museum, but over the years, rumors have swirled that the bed is cursed by Fosbrook's ghost. Now, he allegedly made the bed to be slept on by nobility, but eventually commoners began sleeping on it as it traveled from inn to inn. His spirit is said to attack any low-bred person who dares to rest their head on it. The Great Bed of Ware has been mentioned in several literary works, including Shakespeare's Twelfth Night and Byron's Don Juan. Now, the Great Bed of Ware now sits on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. No one can sleep on it. The Unlucky Mummy. This is an ancient Egyptian artifact housed in the British Museum with a reputation for bringing misfortune and tragedy to those who come in contact with it. The mummy board, which is actually a wooden coffin lid adorned with vibrant paintings, was acquired in 1889. It was purchased by Thomas Douglas Murray, a wealthy collector in Cairo. Now, Murray's experience with the mummy were marred by a series of unfortunate events, including a firearm explosion that injured his arm and the unaliving of some of his close friends. Eventually, the museum sold the unlucky mummy to a private collector who tried to have the mummy exorcised. When he could not arrange it, he sold it for a handsome price to an American archaeologist who dismissed the happenings as quirks of circumstance. Now, the new owner arranged for the unlucky mummy to be shipped to New York aboard a sparkling new White Star liner about to make its maiden voyage. On the night of April 14th, amid scenes of unprecedented horror, the Princess of Amun-Ra accompanied 1,500 passengers to their demise at the bottom of the Atlantic. Of course, the name of the ship was, dun dun dun, Titanic. So as you can imagine, many people believe the unlucky mummy is the reason the Titanic sank. Photographers who have captured the mummy have reported strange occurrences such as, equipment malfunctions, unexplained noises. Sir Ernest Wallace Budge, the museum's keeper, attempted to mitigate the curse by moving the mummy to a different location, but the misfortunes just continued. The Catskills Crone. The traveling museum of the paranormal and occult is home to many objects with dubious pasts, and one of the creepiest is known as the Catskills Crone. As the legend goes, a pair of hikers were trekking in the Catskills Mountains when they came across this statue, which has nails hammered into its eyes and a rope around its neck. They took it from the cave where it was found, bad idea by the way, and once they brought it home, they saw an apparition of a woman accompanied by a smell of pond water. The Annabelle doll. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren started their museum for items just like this one. Annabelle the doll served as inspiration for the Conjuring movies because of the creepy tale that accompanied her. Now, in 1970, the doll was given as a gift to a student nurse named Donna, who noticed eerie things about it, like the doll leaving notes on paper that said, "Help me," moving positions at the kitchen table, and even attacking one of their friends. They eventually had a medium step in to give an opinion. Now, the expert deemed it to be possessed, a viewpoint that the Warrens agreed upon when the doll eventually found its way to them. The expert had said that the doll was possessed by a little girl that had passed there named Annabelle Higgins, but the Warrens said no, that's not the case. The doll was actually possessed by a demon, summoned from the devil himself, and was there to use the doll as a vessel to manipulate and harm people. The doll has been locked up in their museum, thank goodness, but those who have experienced Annabelle, have been known to have experienced very traumatic events in their life, like car accidents, NDEs, and the doll is labeled as extremely dangerous. Well, good, keep that baby locked up then. The dark mirror, another object housed at the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, is referred to as the dark mirror. The person who owned this mirror before giving it to the museum bought it at a psychic fair and said they saw terrible visions when looking at it. It is alleged that the mirror actually reflects the biggest fears of the viewer. People have reported seeing themselves age and disappear when they look into it. Some visitors to the museum have even reported seeing their own perished bodies when they gaze into the mirror. Yikes. The Koh-i-Noor diamond. Now, one of the world's largest cut diamonds is said to hold a centuries-long curse. The Koh-i-Noor diamond clocks in at over 105 carats and is part of the British crown jewels. The diamond once belonged to Ranjit Singh, who founded the Sikh Empire, but it was eventually taken by the East India Company and claimed by the British. The conflict that surrounded the possession of the jewel is said to put a curse on any man who wears it. Luckily, the last few wearers have been women, and they all seem to have remained uncursed. Robert the doll. This doll, apparently even scarier than Annabelle, is a haunted doll that is currently on display at the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. According to legend, Robert was once owned by a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who received the doll as a gift from a Bahamian servant in the early 1900s. Now, the servant was allegedly skilled in voodoo, and it is believed that she placed a curse on the doll. Robert was terrified of this doll, claiming that it would come to life and cause, havoc. He named the doll after himself, which is a weird flex if you're super scared of it, but okay. And he treated it as his companion. Again, weird considering how scared you are of it. Anyway, the doll's behavior became increasingly malevolent. Visitors at the museum, when they go to see Robert, have claimed that they actually see his eyes move or his expression change and just have a feeling of an intense chill go over them. Iceman, also known as Otzi, this mummy currently resides at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. Though this mummy was discovered in the 90s, it's said to be the body of a man who lived around 3345 BCE. Now, Iceman is the oldest known mummy from Europe, and since he was found, he has been rumored to hold a terrible curse. This is because several people with links to the mummy have passed in very tragic accidents. Forensic expert Rainer Henn was on his way to give a lecture about Iceman when he was actually unalived in a car crash. Now, Kurt Fritz, a mountaineer who directed scientists to the body, was also unalived in an avalanche, while the rest of his party survived. The Goddess of Demise statue. Now, the Royal Scottish Museum is home to an ancient relic that you do not want in your possession, also known as Woman from Lem, the Goddess of Demise statue seems, to curse every family that basically owns it. The statue was discovered in Cyprus in 1878 and dates from around 3500 BC. The 7 members of the first family who owned it reportedly all passed within just 6 years of acquiring it, and similar fates met the family that followed. Now, historians lost track of the artifact for a long time, but the third owners eventually donated it to the museum before they all perished as well. The Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is probably the world's most well-known jewel. It is also totally cursed. Since 1958, it has called the National Museum of Natural History home and hasn't managed to befall anyone with a tragic fate. But before that, many of its owners seemed to perish in odd and very mysterious ways. Several of the people who were in possession of the diamond passed by self-inflicted harm, and several were assassinated. One was even torn to pieces by wild dogs, while another was torn to pieces by a French mob. Let's just say I'm happy that no single person is now considered the owner, because they would definitely be doomed. Which museum are you interested in visiting? Have you been in close contact with any of these cursed items? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley, and until next time, stay scared. These disturbing stories from Ohio will prove that America is haunted, starting with the Thurber House in Columbus, Ohio. James Thurber lived in the house from 1913 to 1917, and during his time there, he suffered from various health issues, including a detached retina, which left him almost blind. In 1915, Thurber's brother, William, passed away in the house due to complications from a burst appendix. Currently, the Thurber House is a museum dedicated to the American author and cartoonist who lived there and even experienced ghostly encounters of his own. But centuries ago, the property was built on traces of the Ohio Lunatic Asylum, specifically near the State of Ohio Asylum for the Insane Cemetery. Now, in 1868, the Ohio Lunatic Asylum burned down and the land was divided into 3 residential parts, one of which later became the Thurber House. People who visit the house say they've seen books flying off the shelves and heard footsteps on the back staircase, as well as doors creaking and doors opening and closing on their own.
Alrighty, what are we starting off with today? Oh, none other than the infamous Robert doll. Okay, maybe he isn't ancient compared to a lot of the other artifacts I'll be talking about today, but he makes up for it in the terrifying category. For starters, the doll only looks vaguely human. His nub of a nose looks like a pair of pinholes, and he's covered in like little brown marks, kinda like scars. His eyes are beady and black, and combined with his malevolent smirk, he's terrifying to look at. And that's coming from somebody who loves creepy dolls. Clasped in his lap, he's holding his own toy, a doll with disproportionately positioned eyes and a too big tongue falling out of its mouth. Now, this doll originally belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, an artist described as eccentric, which, most artists are, but I promise, I'll elaborate. Neighbors of Robert used to hear him having a conversation with the doll, and this continued into his adult years. Okay, that's not too weird. He brought it everywhere and talked about it in the first person as if it weren't a doll. That might sound kinda batty, but yeah, it's the best way to deal with cursed objects. Trust me, I'm talking from experience. The doll remained stored in the Otto family home until Robert died in 1974. Now, after his death, a couple bought the house, and their young daughter found the doll in the attic. The girl often claimed that the doll was trying to enter. Go figure. If it was hidden away, probably for a reason. The doll is now on display in a museum in Key West and is still believed to curse people. His last caretaker before the museum experienced him disappear and reappear as he pleased, along with hearing footsteps and giggling in the attic. Some claimed the doll's expression changed when anybody badmouthed his owner in his presence. He's also been responsible for, a couple of car crashes, some divorces, broken bones. Okay, good Robert. Please, I don't need to be cursed. Let's move on, shall we? Next up, we have the Dybbuk box, or Dybbuk box. Depending on who you ask, the pronunciations are different all over the interwebs. Nevertheless, in Jewish folklore, this is an evil spirit. Supposedly, a Holocaust survivor accidentally summoned the demon while using a homemade Ouija board, but managed to trap it inside the wine cabinet. Okie dokie, let's just unpack that for a second. Somebody summoned something evil with a Ouija board, sealed it in something else, and people keep trying to awaken it? Let sleeping demons lie, we're crying out loud. It's a new year. Let's just not bring anything crazy into it. Kevin Mannis bought the box at an estate sale in 2001 and immediately started having nightmares about an evil hag. Ditto for anybody who stayed with him. Now, he gave the box to his mother, who suffered a stroke on the same day. By the way, this story was the inspiration for the 2012 horror film, The Possession. You've probably heard about it. The box's later owners have also claimed that, that creature appeared in their nightmares as well. The last owner was Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, who not only had nightmares, but developed a strange skin disease and began coughing up red fluids, if you get what I mean. Now, at that point, he contacted his local rabbis, sealed the creature back in the box, and gave the cabinet to, Zach Bagans. You've probably heard of him? Ghost Adventures? Yeah, that went in his museum. By the way, most recently in 2018, Post Malone fans claimed his series of bad luck was caused by his contact with the cabinet. Look, don't look at me, I believe in omens. Let those things be, let them be. Alrighty, so that brings us to the midway point on today's list, James Dean's car. You know James Dean, right? I hope so. This man freaking loved his 1955 Porsche Spyder, having had it extensively customized, and he affectionately called it, yeah, you've guessed it, a little. Now, apparently the car was so transparently evil that Sir Alec Guinness, when meeting Dean for lunch, claimed, if you get in that, you're gonna be found dead in it by this time next week. Now, James Dean laughed it off. He was like, whatever. He went off to go prepare his car for the Salina sports car races with his Porsche mechanic, Rolf Weatherich. Enlisting stuntman Bill Hickman to help out, their original plan was to tow, let's call it Little B, to the races, but Rolf felt it would be better to Dean to get used to the vehicle and run the engine in. I'm not the expert here. On that fateful Friday, Rolf sat next to Dean while Hickman followed with his truck and trailer. Police pulled over the convoy and issued a pair of speeding tickets just outside Bakersfield, but that didn't slow anybody down. Please, this car was meant to go fast. Alright, so we're barreling down Route 466 at an estimated 85 miles per hour when a young student named Donald Turnipseed, driving a Ford two-door, decided to make a sudden turn onto Route 41. Now the impact sent the Ford almost 40 feet down the road and ejected Rolf from the Porsche. James Dean was pronounced dead on arrival at the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital at 6:20 p.m. But of course, it wouldn't be a curse if it stopped there. When the mechanics tried to repair the wrecked car, it fell on one of them, crushing both his legs. Dr. William S. Ridge bought the Porsche from a salvage yard in Burbank and proceeded to strip it for parts. He installed the engine into his Lotus race car, then loaned the transmission and suspension parts to fellow doctor and racer Troy McHenry. Now our good doctor crashed the Lotus at the 1956 Pomona sports car races, surviving, but McHenry, not so lucky. He hit a tree in the same race. That was the end of him, and that's where the curse gains its strength. Two thieves who tried to take pieces of the car were both injured. Yep, the curse doesn't stop here. Shortly after those crashes, publicity monger and self-proclaimed King of Customs, George Barris, bought the Spider, promising to rebuild it. When the mangled frame was found to be beyond recovery, he chose to capitalize on the car's notoriety. The Porsche was loaned to the Los Angeles chapter of the National Safety Council, and from 1957 to 59, it went on a gruesome tour of car shows, movie theaters, and bowling alleys. In March of 1959, while in storage in Fresno, the car caught fire. No idea. Just poof. It suffered remarkably little damage, just 2 melted tires, some singed paint, and fortunately the fire didn't spread to the other vehicles in storage. Now meanwhile, Barris, we all remember him, had sold a pair of tires from the 550 and both reportedly blew at the same time, causing the new owner to, skid off the road. Little B even managed to crush and kill a truck driver who was transporting it. The car has since disappeared into a museum archive, which is probably for the best. I'm nervous enough around regular cars, but the thought of this cursed monstrosity is making me extra jittery. Or that's maybe from the monster I had earlier. But still, as somebody who drives on the 401 on a regular basis, no thank you. Next up, folks, we've got the unlucky mummy. Granted, I don't think I've ever met a lucky mummy, but make of that what you will. So even though technically speaking, an iceberg and poor building plans caused the end of the Titanic, what if there were supernatural forces at play that pushed the fate of the ship along? Enter, you guessed it, the unlucky mummy. It was donated to the British Museum in July of 1889 by Mrs. Warwick Hunt of Holland Park, London, on behalf of Mr. Arthur F. Wheeler. It was displayed in the first Egyptian room of the museum from the 1890s and has remained on public view ever since, with the exception of periods during the First and Second World Wars, when it was removed from its case for safety. It has left the museum on a number of occasions when it formed part of a temporary exhibition held at 2 venues in Australia, and between February 4th to May 27th of 2007, along with a bunch of other pieces, the unlucky mummy was exhibited at Taiwan's National Palace Museum during a press conference. The mummy to which the article belonged is said to have been left in Egypt since it never formed part of the collections of the British Museum. The mummy board is currently displayed in room 62. The name unlucky mummy is misleading as the artifact isn't really a mummy at all. I promise I'm getting to it, but it's a painted wooden mummy board. So it's kind of like the inner coffin lid. It was found at Thebes and can be dated by its shape and the style of its decoration to the late 21st or early 22nd dynasty. In the British Museum, it is known by its serial number EA22542. The beardless face and the position of the hands with the fingers extended show that it was made to cover the mummified body of a woman. Her identity isn't known due to the brief hieroglyphic inscriptions containing only short religious phrases and omitting mention of the name of the deceased. The high quality of the lid indicates that the owner was a person of high rank. It was unusual for such ladies to participate in the musical accompaniments to the rituals in the temple of Amun-Ra. Hence, early British Museum publications described the owner of 22542 as a priestess of Amun-Ra. E. Wallace Budge, keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities from 1894 to 1924, also suggested that she might have been of royal descent. But we're not quite sure. I'm not a history expert, folks, for a lot of reasons. And finally, we have the one chair you might not want to sit in. Or don't take my advice and see for yourself. Popularly known as Busby's stoop chair, this wooden furniture is cursed by the spirit of Thomas Busby, who was known to ruthlessly, kill people. Thomas was arrested, tried, and condemned to death after he killed his father-in-law, Daniel Audie, in 1702. Audie and Busby were running a coin counterfeiting business, as well as other criminal enterprises, and they argued about the business, which ended with me ending you, Before getting hanged for his crimes, he requested to have a meal in his favorite local pub. And upon finishing his meal, he stood and said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit on my chair." And ever since then, 63 people who dared to sit on the chair met untimely and terrifying deaths. I'm sorry, someone out there waited until the death toll got to 63 before deciding, maybe there's something wrong. I feel like I would have noticed the common Lincoln deaths by, 20 weird deaths or so? at least. Specifically, locals claim that during the Second World War, Canadian airmen from the nearby base at Skipton-on-Swale went to the pub, and those who sat in the chair never returned from missions over mainland Europe. As recent as the 1970s, some fatal accidents were linked with the chair. Busby was, ended at St. Hutton Crossroads, beside an inn, which later had its name changed to the Busby Stoop Inn. The site of the execution, opposite the pub on the A61 and A167 crossroads, which are apparently now a roundabout, was said to be haunted by his ghost. Later, the owner of the pub donated the chair to the Thirsk Museum in the United Kingdom, and it's still there, but it's hung up above the ground to prevent any further deaths. Granted, it's only about 1.5 meters above the ground, which I don't think that's high enough. Stupid people will still find a way. May I recommend a healthy 3 feet, or put it in a box, or even better, put it away forever. Very controversial Third Secret of Fatima is believed to be a secret document hidden within the archives. In 1917, 3 folks from Portugal received prophecies, one of which was witnessed by thousands of people. But this supposed suppression of the Third Secret fueled rumors that its contents were regarding a nuclear world-ending event, natural disaster, or worse. The release of the contents of this secret in 2000 didn't do much to quell speculation. So to be specific, the first prediction was a vision of hell. The second was a prediction of the end of the First World Mass Extinction event, and a prediction of the beginning of a worse war, as well as a call to consecrate an entire country that's still doing bad things to this day to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a way to bring peace. And finally, the third big elusive secret, a vision of the Pope, along with other bishops, priests, religious and lay people, being killed by soldiers. The Church has taken this not as specific prophecy, which has or will come true, but in the words of Pope Benedict XVI, a vision, speaking of dangers and how we might be saved from them. He said it is meant to mobilize the forces of change in the right direction. But still, who knows what other curses those documents are holding? Hidden within the Vatican Palace, a set of opulent apartments are adorned with stunning architecture and are said to have hidden passageways used by the infamous Borgia family. Believed to be the first ever criminal family, they were Italian-Spanish nobles who rose to prominence during the Italian Renaissance. During the reign of Pope Alexander VI, formerly known as Rodrigo Borgia, they were suspected of many crimes, including but not limited to adultery, interfamilial relations, theft, bribery, killings, mostly from the liberal use of arsenic, and worse. Because of their grasping for power, they made enemies of the Medici family and the Dominican friar Girolamo Savonarola, among many others. This family stands out in history as being infamously steeped in sin and immorality. Going back to that mention of Alexander VI's reign, it is reported that they hosted a lot of naughty parties in the Vatican Palace, the Banquet of Chestnuts being considered one of the most disreputable balls of this kind, with reports of 50 courtesans in attendance for the entertainment of the banquet guests. It is alleged that not only was the Pope present, but also 2 of his offspring, Lucrezia and Cesar, were also there. If you were wondering, the Pope had descendants? While a cardinal, Pope Alexander maintained a long-term illicit relationship with Vanosa de Catene, with whom he had 4 descendants, Giovanni, Cesar, Lucrezia, and Giuffre. Rodrigo also had offspring with other women, including a daughter with his mistress, Giulia Farnese. Cesar went on to kill Giovanni in hopes of gaining more power within the family, and was successful on that front. Lucrezia was a notorious poisoner. She became famous for her skill at political intrigue and the mysterious deaths and disappearances of her husband. I wouldn't want to mess with whatever evil spirits are still lingering around those old apartments and passageways, since there's probably a reason they aren't used anymore. The most cursed ledger of all time that calls the Vatican archives its home would have to be the record of exorcisms conducted by the Catholic Church. A famous man once said, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist." And in modern day Vatican City, the devil is considered alive and well. The late Pope John Paul II personally performed 3 exorcisms during his reign, and Pope Benedict XVI expanded the ranks of the Catholic-sponsored exorcists throughout the world. In fact, Father Gabriel Amorth, the Church's chief exorcist, claims to have expelled more than 300 demons a year from the confines of his Vatican office, and there's about 350 exorcists operating on behalf of the Catholic Church in Italy alone. Father Gabriel also teaches bishops how to tell the difference between satanic possession and psychiatric illness, noting that those who suffer from the former seem to be particularly repulsed by the sight of holy water and the cross. So in Catholicism, exorcisms are performed in the name of Jesus Christ, and there's a distinction between major and minor ones. Minor exorcisms are included in some blessings in which priests call 12 sacraments, such as blessed salt. The Catholic rite for formal exorcism, which is the major one, is given in section 11 of the Ritual Romana. The ritual lists guidelines for conducting this, and for determining when a formal one is required. In Catholic practice, the exorcist also has to be an ordained priest, if that wasn't obvious. They recite prayers according to the rubrics of the rite, and make use of religious materials, such as icons, sacramentals, and holy relics. The exorcist invokes God, specifically the name of Jesus Christ, as well as saints of the Church Triumphant and the Archangel Michael to intervene as needed. According to Catholic understanding, several weekly exorcisms over many years are sometimes required to expel a deeply entrenched demon. The Holy Rosary has a very important power, and also holy water, really important here. Going back to Father Amorth, he states that in the year 2000, Pope John Paul II attempted to exorcise a woman, but failed. Father Amorth later witnessed the possessed woman crawling up walls like a spider. Absolutely terrifying. A filed lawsuit claims that during the evil German dictator's reign, the Vatican Bank received at least 200 million Swiss francs from his puppet Utasha regime, money that his followers allegedly looted from groups of people they set out to eliminate. The class action lawsuit, headed up by attorney Keelan Friesen at Minneapolis law firm Zimmerman Reed, involved 2,000 plaintiffs, seeking an accounting of the funds as well as restitution that could go up to like 200 million. The claim also names as yet unidentified Swiss, Austrian, Argentine, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and German banking institutions, where according to the lawyer, some of this plunder might have been routed to help war criminals escape to Argentina. The suit relies on once classified documents from various countries that have been made public over the last couple of years. Well, the last many years, as well as a 1998 US government report that was issued. Some of the report's most damning evidence appears in a 1946 intelligence memo from a US Treasury agent named Emerson Bigelow, who states that the Swiss francs were held in the Vatican for safekeeping. The Vatican has consistently denied allegations of receiving Yahtzee gold, and said its internal review showed no trace of such funds, because you're going to trust the internal review from a bank that actually destroyed their records for 70 years before going public on occasion. One of the reasons the Vatican has been criticized is because it refuses to open its archives. A key figure in helping folks keep this money hidden was Krunoslav Draganovic, a Croatian priest who was the head of the College of San Girolamo in Rome. So men in Croatia who wanted to become priests lived at San Girolamo while studying for ordination, and after the big mass extinction event, the college served as a safe house for the Utashi underground. So it's alleged that Draganovic aided Utashi military and civilian leaders who had been in power in Croatia and committed crimes. Krunoslav's assistance consisted in obtaining false documents and safe passage out of Italy. Experts write that there are allegations that Krunoslav used his Vatican bank connections to launder the gold stolen by the Utashi, and that he was paid for his cooperation. By the way, Krunoslav admitted that in 1945 he had personally moved 40 kilos of Utashi gold to Rome, concealed in packing cases. A request made under the Freedom of Information Act resulted in the 1997 release of Bigelow's report. Criminal conduct described in the report led to the institution of a 1999 lawsuit against the Vatican Bank, filed by survivors and descendants of the Utashi. But the lawsuit was dismissed in 2009 under terms of the Sovereign Immunities Act. Although the legal case no longer stands, there's a lot of moral questions around all of this. Ever since allegations concerning the Vatican Bank and the Croatian plunder became public, there's been a lot of requests to the Vatican to allow access to the archival documents, and nothing yet. If there is incriminating information, it should be allowed to come out. Whatever data survived the mid-1940s would be found here, and according to experts following tradition, documents pertaining to that time period could have been made public on March 12th of 2014, which was 75 years after this Pope was in power, but nothing's happened yet. At a 1997 conference on looted Yahtzee gold in London, the Vatican was the only one out of 42 countries that rebuffed all requests for archival access. At a 1998 restitution summit in Washington, it ignored an emotional plea made by US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright and stood aside as 44 countries approved an ambitious plan to return icky looted art and property, settle unpaid life insurance claims, and reaffirm the call for open access to that time-era archive. There was some enthusiasm over a 1999 Vatican announcement to allow Jewish historians into archives, but it was short-lived. Access was limited to 5,000 documents that had been hand-picked. All that cursed gold, still waiting to see the light of day. Finally, Queen Mary, a rallying force for Catholic cause in England, wrote a letter in French to Pope Sixtus V from Fotheringay Castle in Northamptonshire in November of 1586. She professed her allegiance to the Catholic Church of Rome and was going against the falsehoods perpetrated by her enemies in England. Now, this letter was written a few weeks before losing her head for her alleged involvement in the plot to take out Queen Elizabeth I. She claimed that the tribunal that condemned her to death was illegitimate, but her claims couldn't save her life or her head.